Hey, real quick before we start the podcast, if you have listened to more than one episode, can you do me a favor and rate and review the show? Now, I'm not big on asking for favors, but we really want to get this podcast listed in the top of all health and fitness podcasts, not just the fitness category. This will take you less than a minute, and if you could do that, that would make us friends forever. And since we refuse all sponsors on the show, this will be my only ask rather than telling you to go check out some supplement or product we don't actually believe in, like every other podcast out there. So please rate and review. Okay, that's it. To the podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Ashley Hicks and Joe Courtney. How's it going?
Hello. Good as usual.
Yeah, we're going to get right into it. So we're talking about rest times today. This is something I do think about often because there's a lot of conflicting literature on this. We have done other studies on this. And so I have some broader takeaways that aren't necessarily what the study says. But we've also, like I said, we've covered other studies on this. We've been training a long time ourselves. We've had a lot of athletes go through a program. So we're going to kind of give the coach's take on some of this as well. The study was done in 2020. And the title of the study is Volume Load Rather Than Resting Interval Influences Muscle Hypertrophy During High Intensity Resistance Training. And so what they were really looking at, they ended up with 28 untrained people. And I think it was 18 men, 10 women. So better representation there on the female side, Ashley. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
They had a 10-week training protocol, which isn't how really any of us would ever actually lift, but I get they're trying to greatly fatigue the muscles. The training program was performed 2 days per week for a total of 10 weeks and included 3 sets of unilateral leg press at 80% of 1 rep max to concentric failure. They were testing the difference between long interval and short interval. Just remember that as we go through everything today. They're really just looking at longer rest intervals between set or shorter. That's the main question we're looking to answer by the end of this episode. And it was 3 minutes versus 1 minute is the big thing. And what they were tracking was hypertrophy, strength, where they were just assessing 1 rep max, and then overall volume load, which was a bit, we'll get into it. I have some problems with the thought process behind the study, but I still think that there are a lot of great takeaways, but I don't want to jump in any further than that without first hearing what each of you think. So, Joe, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'll try and compliment sandwich this one. So I have liked when studies are a little bit specific with how they do things. The 10 weeks is good to see as a length. You know, there's some that will do 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, and to me, like when you're doing training, that's just not good enough. I think their main goal was to just assess hypertrophy, which is, I guess, if that's all you care about, and that was part of their hypothesis. They kind of proved their hypothesis true, which I kind of don't always like to see. But that's fine. And I think they just threw strength in there just because whenever there's lifting studies, just want to see if you get stronger, even though I don't know if they're actually going for it. But and I'm going to kind of steal this from Ashley too, is that why stop this whole studies with training 2 different legs to train your legs 2 different ways? I don't know why that's a thing. I don't know why it keeps popping up. Like since the first time we saw it, I'm just thinking, why would they structure like this for one, and 2, why would anybody agree to do it?
Mm-hmm. Let me just break in for the listener who hasn't read the full study. So that is one thing that they were doing is and this happens all the time in strength training studies. I think scientists feel it is the most accurate because it's the same person. So you can use one leg as a control, and then you can utilize the other leg as the one that has the variable that you're trying to research. And that sounds great, but
in
theory, right? As a scientist, I can see how that sounds like a good idea to you. As a coach, it's very often to have one arm stronger than the other, or one leg stronger than the other, one leg bigger than the other. Like perfect symmetry in strength or even size is actually pretty rare, unless you are like an elite level bodybuilder who's really going after that. And so it is very unusual in application, and I'm not a huge fan of it either. I would rather just compare 2 similar people or get enough people to where the similarities kind of like level themselves out, as opposed to using your leg as a control. I think using one person as a control is just hard in general, because if you took me today and did everything, and then there was a 6-month washout period, and then you took me next year, I'm going to be different. I'm going to have trained more, whatever. And that's also why they use untrained people. But anyway, this happens a lot. We don't like it. So now the listener knows.
Yeah. And they did randomize the legs across the people, so I guess that's kind of a way to help so that like, people aren't just like choosing their dominant leg for whatever they're doing. Um, Volume was equated. That's kind of like the key takeaway to me. There's not a ton that I would kind of add to it. Like it's an error review study. Um, when I guess my biggest issue with the study, or thought toward the study, is that we talk about with our programming getting the right stimulus, and each workout has a different stimulus, and you could train, all there's a ton of different ways to train strength, the different kinds of strength that you want to train, whether it's dynamic, velocity training, whether it's strength endurance, whether it's just raw strength, whatever it is. And this one, all of their sets were to failure, so that is going to be more of hypertrophy and strength endurance skewed towards. So that's kind of why I said it was pretty obvious they were going for a hypertrophy field versus raw strength, because I don't think you could fully assess how much stronger you get by just going to failure all the time. So I think, and while they are equating volume to the rest time, like to the greater rest time, if you I think if you wanted to train more for muscle endurance, then a shorter rest time might also be but that higher muscle fatigue, shorter rest time might be more beneficial for what you're going for. But for just strength, as far as hypertrophy goes, to get more volume, then you would have to equate the volume and make sure you're getting the same amount across, or rest more to get the greater volume. So again, intent is kind of what I'm going to say toward this. And if your intent is what they were going for, like hypertrophy wise, then get greater rest times and get your volume. Ash.
Um, yeah, I said another study I would never do just because of the two different legs. But it and I agree with Joe. I said it looks like the volume load is what's key here, not necessarily the rest times, which I guess I went in reading the study thinking I was going to have a takeaway about longer rest times versus shorter rest times. But this just proved to me that the greater the volume load, the greater the muscle growth is what it seemed to be the overall takeaway almost. If you're looking for that hypertrophy, if you're looking for that muscle growth. But I feel like for our listeners, because I always am trying to think of the garage gym athlete while we're reading this, we are prescribing that volume load.
Right.
So for us, like it would have been a more beneficial study if it was actual rest times almost. And I did wonder if they're randomizing the legs, someone's going to have a more dominant leg on one of either the control or the variable. So I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to say I didn't like the study. It was just different, I guess, than what I thought it was going to be.
Another like problem that I had with like just going off of that is that they did one leg. Um, they kind of based the volume off of one leg's failure, and then they did the other leg the same. But then I didn't see what order they did it in. If they would just, okay, let's just train this leg under this protocol, and then rest, break, then go to the left leg, or they were alternating back and forth. Because if you're doing it in the same day, whatever leg you're doing second or in between, like that could affect like with the energy output that you have, whether it's your, burning whatever energy, and just that, like, especially because they're lifting till failure, for how it could stack against the second leg they're doing. So that's also why it was kind of a weird study, because I don't know how you could even completely balance it out if since you're doing like whatever leg you're doing second is going to suffer than whatever you did first, volume wise, intensity wise, rep wise. Even though those muscles are technically rested, your body itself is not quite, and you might not even feel up for going to another leg to failure.
Yeah. So going to what Ashley said on like for the garage gym athlete, we prescribe the volume. And so all I really want to see in a study is everyone does the same program. Some people rest a little bit less between sets, and the other group rests more between sets. Same program. That's all I want to see. And some of those studies have been done, but this one was silly because there was the assumption that because they were going to failure, they were saying, well, if you do short intervals, you would be doing less volume. And what you're saying is the reason it's true, Joe, because if you're fatigued and you're only resting 1 minute and you're super tired, your next set is going to be worse. But that only really happens when you are continually doing sets to failure. If I say do an EMOM set and you're resting 45 seconds in between sets, everyone's doing the same amount of volume, for themselves. They're based off of your max or whatever. But everyone's doing the same amount of volume. It's not like if the EMOM is 3 reps every minute on the minute, everyone does 3 reps every minute on the minute for 10 minutes. That's 30 reps. No matter what, you're doing 30 reps. And so that's what you do. Not, well, do as many reps as you can this minute. And if it's less the next minute, that's fine. And then less the next minute, that's fine. Then you take a minute off. Like, that's not what we're trying to answer the question for. But from this study, what we do know, strength was pretty much a draw for untrained individuals. They're basically, if you, it doesn't really matter. And I'd almost throw that out the window with untrained athletes too. Yeah, if you're lifting something, everyone's going to get stronger. But hypertrophy, they said the longer rest interval was better. And that's not actually what most of the literature says. Most of the time, if you're thinking hypertrophy, you're thinking of resting 30, 60, 90 seconds in between sets, doing supersets. That's what we've seen a lot. And then strength, longer recovery periods. So you're able to attack those heavy loads again without having to risk failure under heavier load. And this is the only time I've really seen something that's to the opposite. But the biggest takeaway, and what I think garage gym athletes should care about the most, is volume. So the big takeaway here, I was the same when we first started the study. I thought we were going to have some conclusive answer. I was the same as Ashley. I thought they were going to be like, okay, well, short intervals are better or long intervals are better, but that's not what you walk away with in the study. You walk away with, so long as the volume is equated, it doesn't matter that much. And so you just need programs that have the proper amount of volume for you. And that's almost should make you like not worry about it so much.
Right.
Just follow garage gym athlete programming. We've got the volume and load in there for you at the appropriate amounts. And then from there, rest as needed. And one study we did, I don't know if it's been like 2 years now, but auto-regulated rest, they found that might be the best. And I, from my perspective, non-scientific perspective, feel like that's true. Because I think if you are, sometimes you're ready to go, sometimes you're not. I know if I do a heavy set of 3, I don't need that much recovery to go again. But if I do a heavy set of 10, like closer to like a 10 rep max, I might need 5 minutes to fully recover from something like that. And then if I'm doing lighter, more hypertrophy based stuff, I feel like I need I honestly feel like I need 30 seconds, 45 seconds before I could hit another set. And that's why I have to time my rests a lot of times, because I will rest less. Auto regulation. I will just get back after it because I'm like, I feel fine. And the science kind of supports that that's okay. But if I like auto regulated rest a lot more, so long as I'm kind of fitting within garage gym athlete blocks. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, is just worry about the volume, getting all the work done that is prescribed, and you'll see results in strength and hypertrophy, and you won't have to worry about much else. So don't worry about 1 minute rest, 2 minutes rest, 90 seconds rest, whatever. But also don't try and attack heavy weights if you're not recovered. Be smart about it.
Yeah, just a ending positive spin on the studies that, like, if for our athletes, I think we're on the spectrum of the more advanced side when it comes to programming and fitness and stuff. But for the people that somebody that just kind of goes in and lifts weights and is like, I'm going to do a 5x5, I'm going to do 5 sets of this, and they think, oh well, if I just rest less, then I get more of a pump, then that's kind of what I need because my muscles will break down more. But then you could just be like, well, no, actually, science says that you should actually rest more to do better. So I think for the more casual, introductory, sort of simpler programming, somebody on simpler program, or just kind of just going in there and lifting, then this is a good tidbit of, hey, rest more, lift more, gain more, and that's it.
Get it done. All right, let's jump into the workout.
Yeah, it's fat and sugar this week, so your rest is going to be some zone 2. You're going to repeat the following circuit. You have 8 minutes in zone 2. You can either run, bike, walk, whatever you need to do to keep that heart rate at 60 to 70%. And then you have 2 minutes of zone 4 or greater by completing burpee pull-ups until you have accumulated 100 total burpees. Competitors, you wear a 20-pound vest. Then you have a 5-minute recovery period. And during this period is when you're going to tally up how many minutes you spent outside of zone 2 or 4. So time spent in zone 1 or 3 or 5, right? 4 or greater, never mind. 1 and 3, sorry. And if you have a heart rate monitor, you will then complete 10 burpees for every minute spent in zone 1 or zone 3. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, you get to complete 100 burpees after.
It does cap at 100 for the penalty. And yes, it's a penalty. We've fought about this a lot in the past.
No,
this is the one with bonus burpees.
it's all good for you. It's like
Yeah.
life-saving activity. I mean, might as well just do more of it.
Better. Mm-hmm.
So I'll jump in first, and then whatever you two have, because I don't actually have suggestions for this. It's more of the intent of the workout. The whole reason this one was put together was heart rate training zone practice, so you understand what it's like to recover in between rest periods. You know what zone 2 is, you know what zone 4 is, you know what zone 5 is, and you know how to manipulate recovery periods when you're going from high intensity, low intensity. So it's more of a education about yourself and how your body operates. The only real meet yourself in this category, one, zone 4 and zone 5, those can be meet yourself moments for some people. Just they can be a challenge to get to, so that could be meet yourself. And then also the same reason zone 2 Murph is frustrating. Like, it can just be frustrating not being in the zone that you want to be in. But other than that, this one shouldn't be as much of a meet yourself, because it's really just manipulating different zones and practicing those. And that's something I've been practicing a lot this year, because I want to be probably done with heart rate monitors in January of next year, after the Daily Over Decades Challenge is over. And so things I've been doing, like when we do 50 minutes of zone 2, I connect my Garmin, I wear my heart rate strap, but then I either spin it on my wrist to where I can't see it, or I'll just take the watch off and put it behind me, like if I'm on the rower or a skier, to where I can no longer see which zone I'm in. But because the heart rate monitor is transmitting to the device, it's all still recorded. And then I can just say, hey, I want to be 50 minutes zone 2. I'm going to have to go by feel. And I've been doing this for a little bit off and on lately, and so I'm surprisingly close. And that's where I want to be. I don't want to be reliant on this device. I do have a tendency to, as time progresses, I feel very comfortable in zone 3, like incredibly comfortable in zone 3. It's not until I get to zone 4 that I even realize that I have come out of zone 2. So that's one thing I'm working on, but I still, for the most part, can, without looking, like there's no on the fly adjustments. All I have to do is think. I'm like, I think I'm in zone 3. Like, I need to maybe bring it back down. So it's been a huge education for me in that regard as well. So I can get off of heart rate monitors next year. But yeah, that's it. All I got for tips.
I'd recommend not running for this, even though I prefer running for most things, just because of like having it's 8 minutes, so like you'd have to like really have to make sure you do an 8-minute sort of loop to get back to where your pull-up bar is, or you just kind of, I don't know how your time would adjust if you're short, if you're still pretty far away from your 8 minutes. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think the dig deep kind of moment is going to be the burpee pull-ups to like really jumpstart your heart rate. So make sure your body's ready for that, getting your lats and everything warmed up and prepared for it, and then going through your zone 2.
The only tips I have are things that happened to me. So I said keep the vest strapped really down. It hit me in the back of the head a couple times because I didn't have it strapped all the way down. So make sure you do that. And then mine ended up being more mental. My heart rate monitor or my watch failed me. And I said I just got angry and I couldn't come back from that. I was just pissed the whole time. So just kind of work on that mental side if that happens. But to Joe's point of the 8 minutes, I just ran kind of around my house. Like I just kept doing loops in around my neighborhood that were short that I could come back in time. So maybe figure that out.
Awesome. Everyone, give it a try. Let us know how it goes. But we're going to sign off from here. All of our athletes, thank you so much for being a part of the program, listening to the podcast. If you are listening, 5-star review and a positive comment, we would really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. And if you're on YouTube, you can leave us a comment, thumbs up, let us know how you like the episodes. And if anybody's interested in getting involved in the training, just go to garagegymathlete.com. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial and not have to worry about calculating the right amount of volume for you. Just do the program. The volume will work. Rest however you want. But that's it. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.